Hi, and welcome to Jim Shorts. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at keyframe basics. When you're editing a video and you've come across a clip that you want to modify or change, you've got a couple options. The first is to add the effect to the entire clip. This is usually pretty easy to do. You just go into your effects bin and drag that onto the video, and boom, the whole video is changed, you can modify it, etc. The other option is to add the effect to only specific portions of the video, or to add the effect so it varies. In some videos you might want the video to be crystal clear, except for a couple seconds where you want to simulate a camera going out of focus or a bump in the camera for a dramatic effect. To do those, you need Keyframe. Now, today I'm going to show you how to use keyframes on two different programs. The program that you're looking at right now is Sony Vegas. The next program we're going to be using is Adobe Premiere Pro. It's a little more expensive than Vegas. It gives you a lot more options. It's a lot more to work with. They also have a basic version you can purchase as well for around $100, I believe. But let's get to the actual video. So we're in Vegas, and you can see I've got a clip here. I'm going to start playing this, and you can see it's basically me talking to the camera. Actually, let me do something here. The screen that Vegas starts off with has that itty-bitty window there, and you've got a couple options. If you've got a second monitor off to the side, you can actually pipe this out to that, or you can just make this bigger. When I'm playing the video, you can see that there's not much going on. It's just a static shot of me talking to the camera and occasionally to myself. Well, let's say that you wanted to change that. And let's say that you wanted to add motion and the occasional blur to it. You do that using keyframes. Now, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see these buttons. This top button is the Event Pan and Crop button, and the bottom button is the Event Effects button. In Vegas, every video clip is going to have these little effects buttons over here at the end of the clip towards the bottom right corner. If you want to make a change or add effects to your video, all you do is click on one of these buttons and it will open it up. Let's say we want to simulate some camera movement so it's not quite so boring. All you do is you click on this, and when you do that, you should get a window like this. And this is if you click that pan crop button there. Let's say that you wanted to add a little bit of movement to the camera so it looks like it's on a shoulder mount instead of set on a tripod. The first step is to take your mouse up to one of the corners of your video clip, and I'm going up to the top right corner here. And you can see this outline of the F, that's for frame, that's what that is, that's showing you this is the frame, this is what you're seeing if you're actually physically looking at the video. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that right corner down a little bit, and you don't want to do too much, because if you do too much, effectively what you're doing here is you're zooming in with your frame, and that means each one of your little pixels is going to get a little bit bigger, and your picture is going to get a little less sharp. But let's take it in so it's just a little bit above my head. It's still sitting over here to the corner, so I'm going to bring it up and center it like so. And now we've got this set up. And now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding keyframes. Keyframes are down here at the bottom of the screen. And the way that you're going to add those, take your mouse. Let's drag out, just a little ways here. And then there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either hit the Create Keyframe button, which is down here in this little row, and that'll add an extra keyframe. And the keyframes are denoted by this little rectangle shape here. And so we'll go back, and then at the bottom here there's a bunch of buttons. You can go to the back to your keyframe and your first keyframe, or keep scrolling through them. So I'm going to go to this keyframe. I'm going to grab this video in the middle here, and I'm going to drag that frame up and to the right. And then I'm going to keep going a little bit farther and go down a little bit. And if you're trying to simulate a camera being on somebody's shoulder or being, on a handheld, something that a person's holding, the best way to do that is to remember that most people, their bodies, even if they're standing still, are going to move up and down just a little bit. So if you want to really have it convincing and look like it's really being held by a person, the easiest way to remember is to go up, down, and then we'll go back up again. And you'll notice that if I just click, like I just moved this slider over here, I slid the slider a little bit over, and then I go and move it down, that the keyframe actually sets itself. So you don't have to set every single keyframe. So now I'm going to move this down and up. Let's say that you're tired of doing all this, up and down and up and down. You figure this is going to look close enough to what you need. Well, here's where it gets really handy with Vegas. If you click down here where there's not a keyframe and drag, it's going to make a little selection box where it selects all these keyframes, turns their inside white. That means they're selected. Hit Control-C to copy that. Move your slider over here where there's no more keyframes. Hit Control-V to paste. And you do that 2 or 3 times, and you've set all your keyframes, so you're actually ready to go. So it's obviously a little dramatic. I am not going for subtle here. But you can see it now looks like somebody's holding the camera. And because it's up and down, it looks like it's a really terrible handheld job. So you've got that. Now, if you wanted to add a effect to it, like say, let's say you wanted to add a blur to your video. That's also very easy to do in this program. You just go back up here, and underneath the pan crop button, the one that you just selected, there's Event Effects. Click on that. It'll bring up this whole window of options. There's a million different effects you can add on there. This time what we're going to add on there is a Gaussian blur. So just scroll down the list, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's the blur. Hit the Add button. That adds it up to the top row where all of your effects are. Hit OK. I moved that out of the way a little bit so you can see what I'm about to do here. If you go into your clip, you'll see that the entire clip is blurry. It's just from beginning to end, looks like the camera was out of focus the entire time. Well, we don't want it to look like that the entire time. We only want it for a few seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this Event Effects window, and this is where you see we've got the Gaussian blur up top here. And the first thing we're going to do is move this one out of the way. This is a keyframe that automatically is preset, and on Vegas it's already got the blur to it. I really like the blur that they've got already set up, and so I'm going to just move that one out of the way. I'm going to click the button to add a new keyframe. I'm going to drag these sliders down to 0 so that there's no blur. So when I'm scrolling beforehand, you can see it's sharp. And then I'll move the slider a little bit, it gets blurry, and then everything after it is blurry. So back to the keyframe screen. So we've got this first keyframe is sharp. There's 0 blur whatsoever. This next one's got a pretty good amount of blur to it. We're going to go back here, and then again, we're just going to drag things to 0. That automatically creates a keyframe. So now the image is going to start out without the blur effect. When you hit this first keyframe, it's going to blur in, and then it's going to blur out, and it's going to end sharp again. So effectively, it's like a camera going out of focus. Now, I'm going to move these really close together because if a camera goes out of focus and you've got a decent cameraman, he's going to catch it and refocus right away. So that should only be a few seconds there at the most. And so then again, you just highlight these, Control-C, and we're going to have a couple times where the camera somehow slips out of focus. Apparently this is not the world's best video guy. And now I'm going to just play this from the beginning so you can get to see what it looks like. Oh, there goes a blur. And so it blurs in and out like that. And that's how you add effects that are only for a short period of time on your one clip. So now let's go into Premiere and take a look at this. In Premiere, you're essentially doing the exact same thing. All of these programs, they have the exact same stuff, it's just in different places. So let's click on this first clip here on the timeline, and up here towards the top, there's this area where it says Effects Controls. Click on that. It'll bring you to a screen where you can see the effects, and it's already got a couple preset things for every clip that you ever put in a video is going to have these presets on here. I've got one here that I've got set up to show you actually what the final product is, and you can see it's essentially the exact same thing you've got in Vegas. The camera moves around like it's a person holding it, and it blurs out on you. Another handy feature of keyframes is that you can reverse some jitters. Let's say that you've got a great shot, but the camera's moving all over. I'll show you one right here. So it looks, it's a neat shot, very romantic, but that camera is just all over the place. What you can do with that is you can actually go in, and on the next one I'll show you here, when I click on this next one, you'll see that I've added keyframes, and what I've done is basically I've followed that up and down, back and forth motion of the camera, and every time the camera goes up, I adjust the keyframe and go down so that it's basically keeping the image roughly centered. And you'll see the image is actually a lot smoother now when I play it than the other one was. Keyframes are incredibly versatile. If you use them properly, you can actually do some amazing things on your videos. I hope this has helped you out in some way. Thanks for watching, and join us next time as we take a look at another way to improve your videos.